Welcome to the Rise to the Challenge podcast. Joined today, he's an entrepreneur, real estate agent, coach. It's Torrin Minutillo. How are you doing today, Torrin?
Hey, Alex. Thank you. I'm going really well. I'm looking forward to this. Thank you very much.
We're so excited to have you on the show to talk about your rise to the challenge. What we like to do with all of our guests is go right to the beginning. Talk about where you're from and what were you involved in growing up?
Well, I'm a son of an Italian immigrant that came out to Australia back in the early 1950s. And I live in the southwest corner of Western Australia, about 15 minutes south of the city Perth. So yeah, what did I do growing up? I lived in a suburban area, grew up the youngest of 7 brothers. So I'm the youngest of 7 brothers in the family. So probably a little bit unique in that aspect. Yeah, had a very good childhood. I always remember playing lots of sports, and I wouldn't say I was a great academic as a child, but I loved. I always joke and say that my favourite 2 subjects at school was lunch and sport.
Isn't that everyone's favorite?
So very much a story of humble beginnings, I suppose you could say.
Growing up with 7 brothers, that is definitely, you could basically have your own basketball team, hockey team, basically there. What was it like, the dynamic growing up with 7 brothers? Did you get along? Was there lots of energy going on in that household?
Yeah, it's a good question. The way to probably explain that is, fast forward in my life, sort of 50 plus years on, and we all get on very well still. And I'm the youngest. I'm sort of turning 57 now. My oldest brother is 73 or 74. So we're 15 years apart. So seven kids in the space of 15 years.
Wow.
And I suspect that mum wanted me to be a girl, or she kept looking for a girl, but she couldn't. It didn't quite happen. But no, I got nothing but fun memories. Yeah, you had your occasional sort of spats, if you like, or the odd fight, usually over very trivial things. But no, as a rule, we all got on pretty well and had good fun. Like I just sort of remember, it was always good fun, and particularly being the youngest. Always having older brothers that can look out for you was good. So that was my experience of the family environment.
You mentioned being part of a family of an Italian immigrant. Did you family really take on the Italian culture while being in Australia, or did you try to blend the 2 fusions together?
I think so. From my parents' perspective, it's interesting. A lot of immigrants do this: is that they take their culture with them to where they go. And one of the things that's, I've since learnt this from my own development, is that one of the things that makes them feel safe is the community of being amongst other people like them in the same situation, which, that sort of creates a sense of safety, having people around them that understand them. Probably one of the interesting things that I found with my family is that, so fast forward again, sort of 25 years, and I went back to Italy, is that the culture and everything had evolved there, but yet when you migrate to another country, you take the culture of where you were when you left, and you don't necessarily evolve that culture to where you are, because you're not sort of going back and forth. So I found that was really interesting. So for instance, my mum and dad were still living in the values of what they had when they left Italy and came to Australia. And although they assimilated into the Australian way of life, if you like, they still had their old cultural ties, but not necessarily evolved with where Italy was moving, over that 25, 30-year period. So very much the Italian culture within our family. I grew up with that. I'm still very close to that and very tied to that. I think, we obviously get modeled in our early age about how we sort of view the world. And I think there's a strong imprint on all the boys in my family, or my brothers, about our attachment to our Italian cultural heritage.
As you're growing up, did you have any signature passions of yourself, something that you enjoyed doing? You mentioned not being academic liking, but you had passions in other areas to make up for that.
Yeah, I think for me, we with our sporting sort of environment here in Australia, we play AFL football, and we have cricket, which is sort of a British game, and so that they're the 2 sort of sporting passions, and and to this day I still follow that very well and closely. But yeah, I think outdoors, like where we live, where we grew up, I was very close to the ocean. Sort of the beach was only literally a 5-minute walk to the ocean. So ocean sports, fishing, sort of outdoor activities, and that was sort of part of the culture. Plus, the climate that we have here is conducive to that. So we're very we're blessed with a great climate here in sunny Western Australia, or as we like to call it, and it's a lovely kept secret.
I wish I had just a 5-minute walk to the ocean. I mean, I'm just jealous just hearing that right now.
Yeah, I must admit, I'm very grateful for that, and consequently, as I've grown up, every time I've had a thought, or maybe moving, or sort of thought about living in other places, the pull of being close to the ocean is very strong. So I don't think I'd ever could live too far away from the ocean. And even now, although I've moved from where I grew up, I'm only in the car 5 to 10 minutes away from getting to the beaches.
I think you even mentioned how being close to the ocean is such a passion or a thing that you just enjoy. And I think a lot of us have those signature places. And even with me growing up in the city or in a suburban area, just being close to like our downtown city area, it's just nice because it feels like I'm at home. I feel natural going down there, enjoying the different atmospheres and environments. It just feels like home.
Yeah, no, I think that's sort of, if we get into it, I don't know, we're sort of around the psychology and human behavior, but that's that sense of belonging, if you've got that good sense of belonging. And I think that definitely gets instilled with you in your early childhood years based on who, your main caregivers, your family environment, whether it's important to them, and then it flows onto you as a child growing up. So that's that sense of belonging, of wanting to be close to a place. And you get other people who are very, probably traveled a lot in their life in the first 4 to 5 years, and they grow up, sort of not having that necessarily strong wanting to be in a particular place. In fact, they feel better by moving from place to place, and it's very much inherent in how you have been brought up and what your value system around how you see the world.
A fun question we're sometimes asked is, what is that dream job for us? As you're growing up, what was that career that you were wanting?
Yeah, I think it's a hard question to answer, because obviously when you're say 10, 12, 14, 15 up to 20, you really don't have an idea of what the world's going to be like, right?
Yeah.
You've got this vision, but as it grows up, and so I'm talking from experience, a little bit ahead of you, Alex, when it comes to age. I think I go back to memories. I initially had a passion for photography when I was in school, because I did a lot of photography in school and I loved that. And then I sort of thought, well, I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to make a career out of that. And then I sort of thought architecture would be good for me, because I liked technical drawing and around that sort of stuff. So that was sort of the passions in, say, high school. But it I don't know, it just evolved. I didn't end up doing either of those two things. But I suppose, for me, an entrepreneurial pathway, or at least having control of my own destiny, I suppose, is the way I look at it. And I did odd jobs, and it wasn't until I actually got into my own business that I felt comfortable in. Now I'm in control of where I'm going. And that took, until I think my first business was 24 going on 25. So quite a long time ago now.
What was the path? Did you go right into the workforce, or did you go to university?
I didn't go to university. My grades and just at the time also, there, interesting talking about that family unit. There was no pressure for me to go to university and to be an academic. A couple of my older brothers did that, and again, migrant family. It wasn't a huge priority on our list of things. So I never felt any pressure of having to do that. And as I said, I wasn't never really an academic at school. I got by. I did what I needed to do. But for me, it was like, getting a job and getting into the workforce. So I sort of left high school and pretty much, looked for a job and ended up, just working in different odd jobs until I found my place in a business.
What was the hardest part about working those odd jobs? Did you feel that it wasn't the right fit at the time and you were looking for that next step in your journey or career?
Yeah, I think just restlessness, like not feeling probably because I never had I've gone to university, I've learnt about this particular subject, whatever field it may be. I didn't have a place that I felt, okay, that's my pathway. So one of my early jobs was I actually did a course on travel, as in travel agent, and I ended up getting a job in a travel company and spent 2 or 3 years in that company working sort of more on the wholesale holiday sort of thing, which was a fun job. But I figured out that it wasn't a good career move because it wasn't a lot of money involved. And I felt, like for me, again, that underlying entrepreneurial spirit was not sure if I could make a business out of this or a career out of this from that point of view. So I ended up switching around a little bit for a period of time until I ended up, in my first business.
You talked about becoming an entrepreneur. Was there any entrepreneurs that influenced you before you made that move to becoming one?
Indirectly, yeah. A couple of my older brothers got into smaller businesses, and I felt for whatever reason that was a good pathway for me. I didn't have any major figures in my family. I'm not sure really what it was. It's not necessarily about making money. We all sort of want to make money, and we want to need money to move forward. That's always a driving force, particularly in the early ages. But for me, it was more just that autonomy. Not having to answer to anybody else, I think, was probably what was driving me, and felt that I had the confidence to be able to do, get into business and actually create my own destiny. I think that's what, this is on reflection now. I mean, at the time when you're going through it, you don't think about it in that way. You just think about forging ahead. What's the next thing I need to do? On reflection, you look back 30 years later and you go, what was it that was driving me? And, now I talk about purpose and, value systems and what's driving you. But at the time when you're, 21, 22, 23, unless that's really instilled in you from an early age, from a significant person in your life, it's not something that comes natural to people, I don't think.
Do you feel that if you had a different mindset of, well, I need to make money and stuff, because going into entrepreneurial side, it's a risk. When am I going to get my first paycheck and things like that? Do you think that would have changed your outcome if you had a different mindset than how you had the mindset right at that time?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Alex. Is that I think I was, I wasn't worried about risk in losing anything, right? And again, this comes out of your family environment, your structure, your life journey to that point, and maybe to my own detriment, potentially overconfident in that I was going to be able to achieve whatever it is I wanted to put my mind to. Whereas I think some people grow up and establish themselves as they're risk averse, in that they are safe, really strong safety first, and making sure. And, this is one of the psychological hacks, is of actually trying to get past that and having the courage to push through, which, through all the work I've done now, I understand that clearly. But again, when you're in that age, it's not something that's top of mind. You become a little bit bulletproof, and you think, well, I did anyway. I don't think everybody's like this, but for me, it was very much a pathway of, well, I'm sure I could do this. How hard can it be? I was overconfident, probably is a good way. And I've come to understand that was, probably one of my strengths, which turned into a weakness.
What was the first business that you had? What was the concept, and what was the impact it had for you?
So for me, the first business was getting into video rental library. So this is before you were born, Alex. There was a world before internet and mobile phones, trust me. So when I first started out, so that was 1989, I, with a partner, got involved in a video rental library, which was, back in the day, you'd go down the corner store and hire out a video cassette. You'd go home, put it into your VHS recorder and watch a movie on your TV. And then when you finished with that, you took it back to the rental store and you got another one, or whatever it may be. So that was quite a fashionable business, mid to late 80s, going through to probably a 10 to 15 year period. So that was the first business. And what did I learn out of that? I think it was an early education for me on, how to provide a value proposition, how to meet a customer's expectation, how do you present to, potentially grow a business? What do you need to do to service a customer? So these are all basic principles of business, which seem like common sense at the time, but they're not that common. So that was my early foray into business. And over a period of 7 to 8 years, we ended up building up 3 locations and did quite well out of that business. But the writing was on the wall that technology was coming and things were moving and changing. So that's sort of what set me on a path of for a few years. I've been a bit restless about where I was. So we eventually got out of those video libraries, as they were called. With the advent of Netflix, obviously ended up taken over a little bit further down the track. But I think there was a transition also, is that we had sort of corner store type businesses, and the big corporate organization, i.e. Blockbuster is probably one that comes to mind, everybody knows, but there was others like that were really taking over the market and forcing out the little guys, if you like. And we were probably considered one of the little guys.
Well, you talked about the change in overtimes and how, like Blockbuster, I remember going to a store on a Friday, renting a movie, and then you see all these digital platforms, and then you're now seeing all the stores just going away.
Yeah.
Do you feel that has helped you become a better entrepreneur with knowing the changes that could happen over time, being a small business owner and being able to adapt to any situation, even past when you were done with the video library company?
Yeah, 100%. I think that adaptive, one of the best skills you can have as a business leader is the adaptiveness to change, right? So, actually now the term I use now is adaptive leadership. You've got to move to what the market presents in front of you, rather than you trying to control the market that's in front of you. And I think, video library, what it taught me back then is that, technology will move and keep moving. It's not something that you're going to be able to work against. So I think, again, as any person who's done well in business over a period of time, is that unless they adapt to change, they're going to struggle and they're going to get stuck in a place that they're not going to be able to move forward. And that's actually part of the coaching that I do now, is actually help people evolve to who do they need to become in the business they are in as a business leader. So I think, that sort of held me in good thing, although it was very uncomfortable at the time, because, I made one of the fatal mistakes early in business was I probably could have sold out those three different locations at different times to make good money. But we didn't do that. We held on. We thought, again, naive, worked against the change. And then eventually got to the place where we just had to close the 3 stores down because they weren't saleable items anymore, lots back in that day. So we're talking early 1990s. I was talking hundreds of thousands of dollars, which was significant at the time for me.
Did it take some time to find that new venture for you, or did you kind of have an idea already?
No, I spent probably another 7 or 8 years just going from one business to another, or trying to figure out what it was that I wanted to get into, and all in the while, in the background, I had an interest in property, in real estate. Dabbling with buying property and subdividing in here was sort of a case of doing some small developments and trying to make some money out of doing that. So that was more of an investment vehicle for me. So I got interested in property, and it wasn't until early 2000. So the year 2000 is, so after I got out of the video library business, it was about 5 or 6 years, just odd retail businesses. Nothing sort of that I could get my teeth into, that I felt that all along I'm evolving as a human. I, met my wife, had 2 kids. There's all this other life stuff going on in the background, and trying to find a pathway to meet their needs and to provide for them as they were growing up. So there's a lot of, psychological pressures going on, some, success pressures, all these sort of things going on. But I never, one of the things I never thought or doing was to step back out and just go and get, a real job, if you like, and working for someone else. That was never part of my my thought process. So where I ended up in early 2000 is in real estate. And I had 2 other small businesses at the time, and got into real estate working for a friend of mine at the time who was in real estate, and he encouraged me to get involved. So I spent probably a 2 to 3 year apprenticeship, sort of learning the ropes while fostering these other businesses, because one of the things that when you get into real estate, there's no guarantee of any money until you actually make sales. And think it's very much a commission-based business. And so it probably took me 2.5 to 3 years to be able to realize that, okay, I've got a place now where I can forge and build a career around and, make good money. Eventually, over that period of time, sold out of the other business ventures that I was in, and just purely decided to focus on real estate and make that my pathway forward. So that's what I did. And within the space of 5 years. So yeah, 5, 6 years. So it was in early 2007 that I established my own real estate company, and I still have that company to this day.
Did real estate or ever your career take a harsh turn for you personally, or was it always smooth sailing?
There's no such thing as smooth sailing in business. As I like to say to people, there's no straight line to success. It's a zigzag, and of course, part of the journey is to try and smooth out those peaks and valleys as much as you can.
Yep.
And that comes with, learning, wisdom, experience, all that goes with it. So when I now reflect back on my business career, which spans 33 years, approximately, it's very much two halves. The first half was leading up to the global financial crisis in 2008. And then the second half is the recovery from the 2008 global financial. So by the time the global financial crisis came around, I was well established in my own business, had been in it for a year or so. I had been in the real estate business, but not my own business, working for someone else. But essentially, although I was working under a different brand, if you like, I was still my own boss, my own driver. It was really just you as a real estate agent. The way I see it is that you have got your own business just under an entity of someone else. But because if you're not motivated to do what you need to do yourself, it's not going to work out for you. But so 2007, 2008, the market real estate was going strong. We'd built up quite a nice little asset pool. I was doing well in all sorts of different measures. And then 2008 global financial crisis came along, and I wasn't really prepared for it. I didn't know that at the time. I thought I was. I was highly geared, had borrowed too much money, had holding too much property. But I felt like if I kept the business going, the cash flow from the business would help me hold all these debts. So I hung on too long was my problem. And so I thought it was. So I'll get to the story as it's evolved. But I thought that it was the global financial crisis that was causing me to have the disruption in my business life and my life in general. And I spent sort of 2 years of soul searching, figuring that out. And it wasn't until about 2011, going into 2012, that I started to, and I came to a place where I had to sell assets to survive. I managed to keep the family home, but only just, and took on a lot more debt to try and get myself through that period. So that was a pretty dark time in my life, and it was a struggle, family pressures, all sorts of different things. But I had good support around me. As mentioned early on, I had 6 older brothers, and they sort of stepped in and helped me out through that period. And I managed to get back on the feet. But the second part of the journey is sort of rising up, to use your thing, rise from the challenge, is that for me, it was a journey back to understanding myself, the personal development journey. What was I doing that led me to get into that position that I needed to change to make sure I wouldn't get into that position? So now, I mentioned to you at the start of my business journey, I was very confident, potentially overconfident. And I understand now that that's what caused me to get into the traps that I got into from a business environment. On reflection, after I've done a lot of personal development work, I know that, but at the time I didn't. And I was blaming the external world for my problems, which was, the global financial crisis, and the market's now soft, and it's hard to get sales and all this external stuff. But it wasn't until I started looking inwardly to who I was for the answers that I started to change the way I looked at business, to change the way I dealt with customers, how I presented a value proposition, how I actually started to, and then I went from not being a person of, education, reading books, learning from others, being coached, to someone who went completely flip. Is that I took on lots of courses, I read lots of books, I listened to, podcasts. Were just evolving through then, starting out. So I sought out whoever I could learn from. As things financially got better, we took on coaches in the real estate company and really started to see the benefit of that. So that led me down a pathway of the more I learned and the more I started to get the results, the deeper I went into learning that stuff. And I got into human behavior and understanding that it was the human behavior that had conditioned within me that was causing the results I was getting. So my journey was one of, well, if I can engineer my own human behavior about what I need to do, then this should impact the results I'm trying to get externally. So over a period of, from some early 2012 right through to about 2017, so about a 5-year period, everything flipped and changed for me. I ended up going from strength to strength, and I ended up having a business that was, 3 times stronger than what it was going into the global financial crisis. And it was, so I wish I had learned all that stuff in my 30s. But again, when you're in your 30s, you think you're bulletproof. You don't think you need this information because you can you can carve out your own pathway. So now I'm, so again, fast forward another 5 years. So the global financial crisis for me ended late 2011, 12. So that's 10 years ago now. And where I am positioned 10 years further down with the experience that I've got, I'm now in a position where I feel really good about the fact that I have minimal involvement now in the real estate company. We've got a great team. We do property development, we do sales, leasing, and property management. So that's a really nice, solid, structured business that I don't have to spend a lot of time in it, which allows me to foster my passion about helping other business owners now go through this journey. And so approximately 4 years ago, I started officially my own coaching business to evolve myself to become a coach. So that took sort of maybe 12 to 18 months to really understand what it took to do that. And now, I'm helping business owners work through, and I've got my own IP, my own model that I run, which is adapted from a lot of things that I've learned along the way. But it's very much a journey of looking inwardly to who you are for the answers to get all the things that you want externally in your life. What I've come to understand, Alex, is a lot of business owners only focus externally, and that's where they're running into problems, and they're looking externally of themselves for the answers to that they're trying to, whatever it is they're trying to achieve, whatever their goals are. But if they look inwardly, they will get the results they're looking for externally, and less frustration, a lot calmer way. So that's sort of the evolvement through those challenges. So to answer your question in a long-winded way was, I had a major stumble in my life, in my business life, through that 2008, 2011 period, so a good 3-year period. But now I look upon that time as a gift. I've reframed all that and understood that unless I went through that, I wouldn't have been in the position I am now. I wouldn't be able to maybe help other people through their journey. And probably now, well, not probably, I know this because I've thought about and done the work on it, is I'm returning to probably what I was here to do in the first place, and to help other human beings achieve what it is they want to achieve. And for me, I express that in business. Sorry, I was just going to say, for me, you can do that in all sorts of different areas or fields of endeavor. But for me, it's helping business owners because I've walked those steps. I've been through those struggles. I understand the obstacles. I understand, and it's very much an inner mental game.
Do you feel if you didn't get back into real estate after the global financial crisis, do you feel that you would have failed yourself, where I'm committed myself to this platform, this industry, and I know I can make it bigger, but I'm not going to let this stop me from continuing? Or did you think maybe I need to go into a different direction? A lot of times there's situations, we see it even with pandemic, things like that. People have a change. They're kind of reflecting on, maybe I know I should be doing something different. Maybe the coaching would have happened earlier for you if you went in a different direction. How was that? Did those topics ever come to mind?
Yeah, I think on reflection, looking back at it, the answer is yes. But when I actually sat down and thought, well, what's going to help me get out of the, essentially the mess that I was in, and I felt that, the real estate business, the opportunity to make money, to service people, and look, I was good at it. I was good at meeting customer and client expectation. So although I did think about, okay, throwing this all in and go and start again someone else and potentially getting, as I said, a real job, whatever that is. But the entrepreneurial spirit was strong within me. And I felt like, given the right circumstances, and it was very much, like we're talking a day-to-day process here of, it's not something that you just wake up in the morning and go, right, I think I've got this clear, right? It evolves and it takes time. And this is something that people need to understand, is that sometimes when you're in these things, it's not a day. You need to have a structure and a plan. And that was another thing that sort of didn't mention in that, is I shifted. One of the biggest shifts I made was going from thinking short-term to thinking long-term about where I was at in my business world, my life in general. The other part for me, Alex, is that again, come to understand this now because I've done the human behavior and the psychological development work, is that at the time of the global financial crisis, I was 44 years old. There was a life journey going on in the background of this business journey. And when you're between your 40s and your 50s, you too tend to get a little bit restless about where you are in your life because you're now starting to enter the second phase of your life. So by all measures, we live a lifespan of about 80 to 85 years in Western worlds. And so when you're in your 40s, you're now entering the second phase. So the way you look at your life journey, and particularly if you've got an entrepreneurial business, entrepreneurial layered on top of that, there's some things that are going on in who you are, who you're developing to be, potentially mortgages, significant other people in your life, potentially kids that are growing up, all these other things, factors that are going into this life journey as well. So it's not just what's happening career-wise, how you're making your money. There's a lot of other, relationships, potentially breakdowns at that stage in your life. And there's all sorts of other things that go on in people's journeys. So I think that's what I find fascinating to help people understand is that, again, all the answers are not external of who you are. They're all internal of who you are. And the pathway from personal development, if we want to get to the heart of what is personal development, is becoming secure about who you are internally so you can express yourself externally. That's the pathway for me of personal development. And often what happens is we're trying to express ourselves externally without really doing the work to understand who we are internally. And so I think for me, did I have concerns? Did I worry that I was going to fail? Yeah, pretty much every second day for a period of time. And then what would happen? You get into these peaks and valleys is that you'd have a good month or two, particularly in the real estate can happen where you might have 2 or 3 sales and you go, okay, all my financial problems are solved. And then you go for a dip for 2 or 3 months, you go, they're not solved, and I think, now I've evolved to go, okay, money isn't the most important factor. I understand that. And a lot of people's journey thing. But again, this is an evolvement through your life. When you're in your 20s and 30s, it is the most primary thing in your world. But when you get to your 40s and your 50s, it's not so primary in your time becomes more important. Potentially family values become more important if that's a part of your life. And although there's a spinning plate in the background of your mind that says you still need to make money and thrive because you need to service the people around you, and then there's a whole lot of other characteristics, status that comes into it plays. And there's a whole lot of other things that go into a person's personality and their mindset that creates all this potpourri of stuff that we try and figure out. But that's the work, right? The work is to evolve yourself to figure that all out. And if you can marry that up with an entrepreneurial pathway, the sky's the limit to what you can achieve. So did I answer your question, Alex? I'm not sure.
Yes, you did. It all comes around because I totally agree with everything you said, because I look at it as if I have a passion project or something, I'm going to go for it. Like it's not going to be, I don't like it being easy. And that's why I love the motto, rise to the challenge, because I become better every challenge I overcome and face.
Yeah. And there's one key ingredient in all that, which again, I've discovered and come to understand. And maybe this is where I look back was now one of my greatest strengths was the courage to push through. So we all need courage because courage is what we face that we have to push through at the testing point of everything that happens. So you're always getting tested, particularly in entrepreneurial pathway and any fields of endeavor in your life, really. You're always getting tested by situational circumstances, things that you're not expecting. And it's often the courage that you require just to push through that barrier to get through to the other side. And often once you push through, you realize that it was never as bad as you thought it was going to be, that you conjure up, because we have a tendency as a human experience to create catastrophe and things are going to work out much harder than what they really are. That's not to say that, there are major challenges in people's lives that they get through. But I think without that courage as a virtue to push through, it's hard to make that personal development growth and to get to the place that you need to get, you believe that you need to get to, and to evolve yourself. So, for me, as my structure and my framework on how people now, courage is at the core of it, and getting to understand what courage is and when do you need it, and when is it useful for you to push through and get to the other side and think about how, well, what's the worst thing that can happen here? If I just push through and do this, we'll see what comes of it. And I think, from what you're telling me is that that's part of your your makeup, your life view is that, push through. And that's that courage that you need to push through that barrier where it's going to be a bit scary, or you don't know what's going to happen. And that's actually what you need. If you don't have that courage, you'll step back. You'll move away from the challenge and not move towards it.
You talked about how personal development is a huge part of your coaching. When first people hear about personal development, are they afraid to kind of really self-reflect on themselves, or do you make it easy for them where they don't even realize they're doing it?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think there's, and it's probably because it's a little bit overused and become commercialized, having a good mindset, personal development, and that potentially people get a little bit scared of what it really is. So my pathway, my method is really to get people to understand, what actually do you understand personal development is, and break it down. So everything I do and I learn is all around behavioral science. So, the neuropsychology, the neurobiology. And for me, I'm a logical thinker. And so some people are not. Some people are more that creative right brain and need to understand concepts, or they're visual more so than they are logical. And so it's really, for me, it's about understanding who am I talking to and how are they going to best understand this. So if it's a creative person, then visually it might be worth, putting a drawing together or putting actually a map in front of them saying this is how it all rolls out and how it works, as opposed to a logical thinker just need a linear process. Tell me how to go from A to B to C to D to, and so on. So I think from a coaching perspective, it's really, there's not a cookie cutter approach to this. It's that one size fits all. And I think that's actually one of the things that frustrates me about the coaching industry, is that there's a lot of cookie cutter approach to how you help people evolve. Well, I think there's 8 billion people on the planet, and we're all going to evolve differently. And there is, so I think that there's no cookie cutter approach to the answers for everybody, but there is a process and a method of helping people evolve themselves. Because I think ultimately, at the end of the day, coaching is about helping the person evolve to come to their own natural conclusions. And when they do that, that's much more powerful than having someone say, Alex, you should do A, B, and C, and you're going to get these results. Isn't that fantastic? If you just stay disciplined and do that, well, if you're not a disciplined person, then that's all going to go out the window. And you might get convinced that this is the best pathway for you, but it's not going to work for Alex, who doesn't think that way or doesn't learn that way. And so my job is to figure out, how does Alex see the world and learn, and then present the information that is going to help him in a way that's going to make sense, that he's going to come to his natural conclusions about it. And that's going to work. So go back to the question. It's really understanding what is personal development? What is it for you, and how do you understand it? So that's what I say. If I ask a question like, what does personal development mean to you? Are you afraid of it? Have you done any? Do you even understand what it is? And so for me, the definition of it is that we're all very insecure in all sorts of different ways. So one of the laws of human behavior is that we're all suffering in some way and insecure. So personally developing yourself is becoming secure, or at least moving on the spectrum of feeling secure about the things that you don't feel so secure about now. I.e., do you feel worthy of becoming an entrepreneur to run a business? Do you actually feel that, I'm afraid that I'm not good enough in doing that? Well, personal development is about, what do we need to help you evolve so that you become more secure in doing this? And I think the life journey, personal development, is how do we become more secure about the things that we're insecure about? So what does insecure mean? Insecure means you don't feel safe. That's the word. That's the breakdown of the word, is that when you don't feel safe in what you're doing, that shows up as insecurities. And we all have them in all sorts of different shapes in our lives. And it's so personal development, self-awareness, is identifying what they are, becoming aware of them first. And then the second part is then accepting that, yes, I do feel insecure about this. Until you accept that you do, you're never going to take the right actions to move forward or to change. So the personal development, like anything, any endeavor in life, and again, my genre is helping people in business, is understanding what are you insecure about in the business journey that we can bring awareness to, get you to accept where the weaknesses are, and then what's the process of overcoming that? What's the change process? And then as the person evolves and feels more secure about them, they feel better in themselves, their emotional state is a lot better, and they're more likely to push ahead and do the things they need to do. But if you sort of gave them the action, here's the 4 actions you've got to take without doing that work prior, their belief system, their conditioning is too strong to overcome, let's just do these 3 actions and it'll all be okay. There's too much conditioning going on, and the conditioning has happened potentially over a 20, 30-year period. So you're not going to change that with just do these A, B, and C and it'll all be good, right? So personal development is about evolving yourself, becoming secure about your insecurities, and that's in all areas of your life. And then so the process is self-awareness, right? So the number one skill in business, and I think the number one skill in life, is becoming self-aware of why do you do what you do? Why don't you do what you know you should be doing? That's the $1 million question that we're all trying to figure out is, why is it that I don't do the things that I know that are good for me that I say I want?
Yep.
So when I figure that out, I'll come up with a formula. But I think that's the life journey. That's the point, is that we're always searching for that in whatever it is, and that sometimes that gets expressed in clients that I'm working with. Well, I need to make more money to pay my bills. Others, it might be, I'm working too many hours. I'd like to scale back so I can spend more time with my family. Others, it might be, I want to exit this business, but I feel trapped in it. And all these things are being insecure about what they need to do, and they don't feel safe. And remembering from a neurobiology perspective is that our primary driver is to feel safe in life. That's our primary instinct. It's in our unconscious. It's not in our awareness all the time, but that's what shows up in all our emotions, is that the wanting to feel safe, because that goes back hundreds of thousands of years in our evolution. It's not something that you choose to buy into or not. It just comes up in all of us. So that's why one of the laws of human behavior is that we're all suffering and insecure in some shape or form.
So what does the future look like for you? What are you hoping to accomplish both personally and professionally in the next few years?
For me, it's very much a passion about helping other people understand themselves. As I said, for me, my focus is helping people on their entrepreneurial journey. And even deeper than that, my focus is business owners who are probably mature in their business. They've been around for 5 to 10 years. They've got a team of 5 to 50 people, because that creates people problems. And once you create people problems, that's one of the things, if you can evolve and understand the people around you at a deeper level. And the way to do that is to understand yourself. So so very much for me is showing people that personal leadership of who you are and how to lead yourself is a pathway to leading other people. And, leadership is a buzzword around business circles around the world. And I think whatever business you think you're in, you're actually in the business of leadership of yourself, leadership of your market, leadership of the people that are around you, your suppliers, whatever it is that you're trying to interact with. You as a business leader need to take on that leadership. And I think the starting point is yourself. So for me, what does it look like for me in the next 10 plus years of my working life? I don't have a end date that I go, right, I'm going to finish when I'm 65 or 60. God willing and health permitting, I'll continue to do what I can do. And for me, it's very much a journey of helping other people. And that's where I get my fulfillment now, is I'm passionate about helping people to understand what I've come to learn. And my job, what gets me going, is how do I present that in a way that makes people understand and helps them on their journey? That's the work. The work for me is not necessarily knowing whether this is worthy or good work. I know it is. It's more about, how do I meet someone who potentially is suffering in silence, hiding behind their mask, and to help them become a little bit vulnerable to seek the help so that they can engage, do the things they want, achieve the goals, so they can potentially serve the people around them better. Because I think ultimately most of us are trying to help other people. I wouldn't say everybody, but most of us on the planet, our life journey is about how do we make other people's lives better. I think at the core, I believe in good in people. I know that there's plenty of evil people, but we only hear about the evil people, but the good people outnumber them probably 10 to 1.
The final question I'll ask you, for someone that's listening to this interview based on your journey and experience, what tips or advice would you give them to overcome obstacles, accomplish their goals, and rise to the challenge?
Yeah, I think the first, great question, by the way, is struggle is part of the pathway. All right. So I think we spend a lot of time trying to avoid obstacles and struggles. I don't believe that's necessarily the best way to get to whatever your goals are. And I'm not saying you're going looking for struggles, but where you rise to the challenge is by becoming resilient to the struggles in life. And there will be, no matter whatever area you're in, or what field or genre. And again, I'll bring it back to a business journey, is that the struggles are the pathway. The obstacles are the ones to be met and the challenge to be overcome. Have the courage to push through, be patient. What you do in the next 1 to 3 months will show up in the next 6 to 9 months. Mm-hmm. What you don't do in the next 1 to 3 months will also show up in the next 6 to 9 months. So get yourself into a rhythm of what do I need to trade off, have the discipline to do the things that may not necessarily be comfortable in the next 1 to 3 months. That's going to give me a benefit. And I'm not talking long-term benefit here. I'm talking, it'll show up quite quickly. And what happens is you get into a rhythm that you're always doing things that may be a little sacrifice in the moment that's going to give you a benefit in the future. And that's pretty much the definition of discipline. Creating that within your character. I think the last thing I'd say probably around this is that our unconscious and our subconscious mind is pretty much running your life. And you're not going to change that. But what you can do is you can pay attention to it to potentially use your conscious thinking to direct yourself better. And I'll finish off, Alex, quoting the great Carl Jung. So he's one of the grandfathers of psychology. And one of his quotes is that until you make your unconscious conscious, it will rule your life and you will call it fate. So these are the words of wisdom that Carl Jung spoke, I don't know, probably 100 years ago now or thereabouts. And they're still very true now, is that our life is run by our unconscious and our subconscious mind. And really the personal development work is to pay attention to what's happening to you with your habits, your actions, your routines. How is that delivering what you're getting? And the best question to ask from a coaching perspective is that serving you well? And if the answer is it's not serving you well, then you need to do some exploration into what you need to move and change to get what it is that you want. Because ultimately your unconscious will just keep overtaking everything. And then you reflect back and go, oh, that's just the way I am, or that's the way it was, or, it was out of my control. I think you need to take control, and that's that personal leadership. So that's what I help people understand, is getting their internal world connected with their external world and what they're trying to achieve. And then personal leadership is the junction point or the connection point between the two. And I think most of us spend too much time looking external of who we are for the answers, and we need to look internally. So the advice, there's a little bit in all that, but is pay attention to what's happening within you internally. Be patient about the changes that you make. Don't look for instant results. We live in this gratitude world of we want to do something on Monday and have a result by Friday. It doesn't work out that way. We need to be a bit more patient. And I think people, that change in itself, that was a huge impact in my life. Having that longer vision, having that, that purpose to go, okay, well, if I just put all these good things in place over the next 1 to 3 months, good things will show up, and then you get into this rhythm. So that's the advice I would give. Be patient.
Well, Torrin, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show and talking about your rise to the challenge. You're inspiring so many people, and we're excited to see what the future looks like for you.
Excellent. Appreciate the opportunity, Alex. It's been fun.